let's make some omelets. The omelet is a classic American breakfast, and the Denver omelet is one of the simplest forms of this dish. Its components are eggs, of course, red onions, green bell peppers, cheese, and ham, which we'll be roasting ourselves. With all of that together, let's get cooking. Let's start with our ham. We're going to be making a honey and brown sugar glaze to go with this big boy. To start, we're going to score the meat so that the glaze can go deeper into the meat. Once we have our crevices, we can start making our glaze. To a bowl, add 1 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of honey, 2 tablespoons Dijon mustard, a pinch of cayenne, 2 teaspoons pepper, 2 tablespoons rice vinegar, a few drops of Worcestershire sauce, 2 teaspoons garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon paprika. Mix everything together and you should have a glaze that's about the consistency of melted chocolate. Next, in a baking pan, add water to the bottom followed by a wire rack to keep the meat elevated above the water. Add a layer of glaze and then bake in the oven at 450 degrees in 20-minute intervals. After each 20 minutes, add another layer of glaze and ladle some of the water over the ham. Repeat this process 3 or 4 times or until the internal temperature of the meat reaches 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Once we have a beautiful char on the surface of the ham and the desired internal temperature, we're going to cut off just a little chunk of this to use for the omelet. Would I go through this just for one omelet? No, I wouldn't. However, I'm going to be using this ham for the rest of the week in my lunches. If you're just making the omelet, just get regular ham and cut it up. So just consider this an extra recipe. You're welcome. Next, we'll move on to dicing the bell pepper. I like to slice along the sides so that I can cut away the stem and the inner parts all at once. Next, slice and dice, and there we have perfectly diced bell pepper. Next, for our onion. To effectively chop an onion, cut it in half, then start making cuts towards the root like this. Don't go all the way to the root, just barely to it. Make thin cuts and then cut the opposite direction. This gives you easily chopped onion. Finally, all that's left is our grated cheese. I'm using an Asiago cheese for this, but traditionally American cheese is used. Use any cheese you like, really. We have all of our elements together and are ready to start cooking. But before that, let's get into a brief history of Colorado and the Denver omelet. The history of the Denver omelet is a little foggy. There is the folk legend of the Denver omelet, though. The legend goes that the early pioneers were the creators of this dish. They would carry their eggs on their wagons while they travel. But keep in mind, there was no refrigeration then, so the eggs would easily spoil over time. So the women of the caravans used bell pepper, onion, and ham to help cover the taste of spoiled egg. There is even a plaque on California Street in Denver that tells of this story along with the ingredients of the omelet. However, it's highly unlikely that this is the origin of the dish. It seems that the more likely origins come from Chinese immigrants working on the railroad. They needed something easy and cheap to eat while working, so they made an egg sandwich with the ingredients of the omelet. This was possibly to simulate a sandwich of egg foo young. Somewhere along the way, the sandwich ditched the bread and became the folded over omelet we know today. Whatever the true origin of the dish is, it is a staple of an American breakfast. Even if some restaurants don't call it the Denver omelet, it still populates the breakfast plates of many Americans around the country. But that was a brief history of Colorado's Denver omelet. Now, let's get back to the recipe. In a pan brought up to medium heat, add a knob of butter. Get that nice and melted, and then we're going to add 3 beaten eggs to our pan. Let that sit. We're not going to scramble this. Once it starts to cook, then we can add our fillings, our onions, our peppers, our ham, cheese, and we're just going to let it sit. Once it starts to cook all the way through, you don't want it dry on the top side. You just want to be able to shake the pan and be able to move the entire thing with it. Then you're ready to flip. Give this a flip, and then we're going to add it to our plate of choice, and there we have our golden breakfast just waiting to be eaten. Just add some salt and pepper to taste, and then you are ready, my friend. That is your breakfast, a good way to start your morning. Now, let's taste this. That's a good breakfast. I'm just going to keep eating for a minute. You just wait a second. Hold on. Omelets are literally one of my favorite breakfast items, and it's so often done incorrectly. It's dry, it's flavorless, it has this rubbery texture from overcooked eggs. The key to getting a good omelet is not to overcook it. You want it creamy inside. You still want it a little runny inside. Sure, you don't want raw egg, but this creaminess, this runniness is not raw egg. It's perfectly safe to eat, and it adds to the eating experience so much. The freshness from the vegetables in there, the onions and peppers, really good, really nice crispness. Adds a nice fresh crispness to it. The ham, stunning, very good. Cheese, Asiago cheese. I love Asiago cheese, it's one of my favorites. So, nice and creamy, just extra gooey inside. And the only seasonings you need for the eggs, salt and pepper. Don't try to go too fancy with this. Don't try to add like garlic powder, onion powder, Italian seasoning. Don't try to add too much. Breakfast is simple. If you wake up in the morning and you want something a little bit more than just like cereal or a Pop-Tart for breakfast, give the Denver Omelet a try. It's super simple. It's really good. Has a lot of good stuff in it. Highly suggest trying it out. But until next time, see you later.